Is our City Council staff report by Deborah Owen, City Clerk, Chief of Council Operations.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. Just to remind those who are listening, there's absentee voting that you can do now at the County Administration Building, 8 in the morning to 5 o'clock at night, Monday through Friday. On this Saturday also, there'll be absentee voting available between 8 and noon at the County Admin Building. And then, of course, to remind everybody that Election Day, Tuesday the 13th, please remember to vote. The polls open at 7 a.m. and close at 7 p.m. And then the results from that election will be available at siouxfalls.org. We hope to have them begin tabulating the optical scan machines with the votes at about 9 o'clock. So hopefully we'll have that wrapped up around 10:30-ish, depending on getting all of those ballots in from the 57 polling places across the city. So looking forward to that. Just remind everybody to absentee vote or remember to vote on Election Day, April 13th. In addition, just to follow up, as you know, we've began to use the electronic agenda more, and so for those of you who bring laptops, that's great. Some of the items on your agenda tonight are not in the red notes. They'll be available electronically, so please remember if you'd like to look at those attachments to access your laptop. And then also to remind you that there was a couple of emails from our police chief concerning the alarm ordinance. Some that's available, of course, on your attachments on Granicus, and then also another item tonight. So please make sure you take a look at those before tonight's 7 o'clock meeting. And then now to talk a little bit about the 7 o'clock meeting, there's a couple of things to talk about in regards to amendments. The first one would be item number 29 at the 7 o'clock meeting tonight. That has to do with the exemption from fees, or the waiver of fees, if you will. We've had a number of proposed amendments. Just to begin, to remind you, it's out there now, and you will hear it with a motion pending. Councilmember Staggers made a motion to exempt 3 entities who work with homelessness: the county's homeless project, and the Union Gospel Mission, and St. Francis House. That is the motion out there that is pending. It was seconded by Brown. And you have not voted on it. So when you hear that motion, that's where it is in terms of you'll need to finish that motion or do a substitute motion, and I'll get to that. So if we could, there's a handout at your desk. It's section 15.1/6, exemption from fees. The first one, it has little red blocks as item 29 in the top corner. The first one is the version as it was revised and brought forward from the planning department. And so you can see it is about waiving plat filing or plan review fees for certain organizations. Currently, it would be Habitat for Humanity, Make-A-Wish Foundation, Repair Affair Projects for the Home Builders Association, and Home Modification Wheelchair Ramp Program of the Prairie Freedom Center. And that's how the ordinance would read, just as it is brought forward to you today. Now, the amendment, of course, I shared with you that if you turn the page, that would be Councilmember Staggers' amendment. That's the motion that is pending before you tonight. And that adds the County Permanent Supportive Housing, St. Francis House, and the Union Gospel Mission. And again, this is to waive those fees, those platting fees or those review fees for these additional organizations. And then also, if those of you, there's an additional amendment out there, Councilmember Benega will not be there tonight, so we have that available to you to look at, but I don't believe he'll be bringing that forward. So that would be that third item, or that third page, and he will not be here, so I'm going to just skip over that, if you will. And that has to do with the 501c corps that are recognized by the IRS. Okay, then the last one would be about Councilmember Litz, and it would, in addition to those groups that I had read earlier, it would add, it would change the name from Prairie Freedom Center to the Independent Living Choices to be exempt, and then also add down below, in terms of the administration's major organizational units, the Fire Prevention Division. And so that's, again, the exemption of waiver of fees for those platting fees or permit fees or inspection fees regarding building projects for those entities. A little bit different from Councilmember Stager, so I want you to be aware of that when you vote on that tonight. You have those two options. As long as somebody will bring forward a substitute motion for Councilmember Litz, you'll either vote on Councilmember Stager straight up, or you'll have a substitute motion and then go back to Staggers if that one fails, just so you know. Any questions on that, though, just speak to me afterwards, and we'll be happy to work through that. I just wanted to make sure all of you knew that, because it could be a little confusing. We're going to start right off with that on the regular agenda. That's first up. So just to kind of give you some warning on. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Deb, just wants to clarify. The Prairie Freedom Center is now called Independent Living Choice. Is that right?
I think that's what I understood from Councilmember Litz today.
Oh, okay.
That is my understanding, that they've had a name change.
And then also, can you just clarify, Bob, on this, Fire Prevention Division? We're talking about the fire department, basically. Okay.
Yes, and any inspection fees they may have on the
Oh, okay.
project would be
Okay.
exempted as well.
Okay.
Thanks. Oh, and also, there was an email that just came through from the Home Builder Association. For those of you who are checking your email before the 7 o'clock, there is a note of thanks. As I think you know, and probably Councilmember Litz would be a better person to talk about their project, but they were saying thank you. Their project is, they often use volunteer help, and so I'll defer to you.
Mr. Chair, if I may. Yes, when this thing came forward originally, we had the four entities that, and I have done volunteer labor on all four entities, and I guess the thing about the entities that were brought forward, and it has been working for a long time, was that they were designed to reduce the price of single-family housing or to keep somebody in their house a little bit longer. And that was the spirit in which this ordinance has always been functioning. And then as this thing came up and from planning, I think there were some very good intentions to add to this. And I paid close attention as the thing unfolded. And what happened was we got away from the original intent of what these four entities were doing, and that was that it had free labor tied into that they were giving away that allowed for people to get houses or stay into their houses. And I struggled a long time with it, but it looked to me like with the advent of, I think it was Dee and Gerald came up with the 501(c), that there were a lot of entities out there that really would qualify for this, that really didn't need that, or, did we need to do it? I also understood Mr. Stagger's amendments for the three housing, the homeless type situations that went on there. I understood their needs as well, but I would say to that end that I think that let me go back through here and get the three here. The Union Gospel Mission, I don't think they've got a project. They've got a foundation over there waiting for something to happen, probably some money. St. Francis House is in the middle of a project right now, which I believe has already pulled the permits and the fees have already been paid for. And the county permanent supportive housing is coming at us down the street. And so when I looked at those things, what I wanted to do is keep with the original intent and the spirit of what the volunteer labor accomplished, but also give the executive branch a opportunity that if other things came forward to include them in, it was an escape valve or a safety valve for unforeseen things in the future where we could do some good with this. It has come to my attention since then that the council, by ordinance, has control of ordinances and fees and exemptions. And that's the way it is according, is that by ordinance and state law, Deborah?
Well, actually, I was going to go back to the school. I think this county, and perhaps even the school district, may be exempt by state law in terms of some fees. But there's an executive order on the county. But there is a section in city charter, and I would wonder, because the council does have the authority by ordinance to adopt fees and the waivers, or I don't have the provision in front of me. So I had raised that question to planning, because I think that Karen Leonard had some concerns with Mr. Bell on that, and so I'm not privy to that firsthand. But I wondered, because you really would be taking the fees, of course, you raise fees by legislative bodies in general because you have that public input on that, and if you do it by executive order or the waiving of them, you wouldn't have that process, if you will, which is my guess is why it's in the city charter. That's what it has its legislature as well. But if you put that in executive order, the question was, is it a delegation of power from the legislative branch to the administration? And I didn't get an answer from that from Mr. Bell. But.
Well, and as I thought about that, the executive versus having 8 people on the council kind of looking something over and thinking about it and having all those avenues of approach for a project coming in here, I guess it was my intention later on tonight that I would remove that executive part of that and leave it by abdication back to the council, whether or not we wanted to bring a new project in here at a certain given time. And I would just say that, you know, the council would have the ability then to add somebody permanently, or if it was for a one-shot deal, we'd be able to do that depending on the circumstances. Because if you look at a lot of these situations that are out there, there are a variety of things that will lead them to get there, including grants, tax credits. There's a whole plethora of things that could do the financing out there that may not suggest that entity needs these fee breaks. And I think that, you know, the 4 that we've got in there has been working for a long time, and if we brought something new in there, that we should judge it on an individual basis. And I guess, like I said, I'd like to, my intention was that we had an escape valve, but I think that maybe the council, without upsetting the apple cart, the council may be the better vehicle for deciding in the future which ones to bring in.
Or you certainly, at some point down the road, you could put in the criteria for which to evaluate those special cases that come along down the road. I know I did do a little work on just looking at what other cities do in terms of waiver of fees, and there's just different approaches to it. Some has a little, it's part of that, an article, if you will, under finance, it would have school districts, certain types of waiver of fees, county government for certain types of waiver of fees. You know, and they really just, it would be across the board for all types of fees, not just for platting. And so maybe down the road it would be good to have a comprehensive look at that. But tonight we're just talking about those who are using volunteer labor for building projects.
Which, you know, government-to-government entities being exempt from the fees, that makes perfect sense to me. There's no sense in, you know, taxing another branch of government to shift money around, you know, but the thing that I would say is the Home Builders Association every year in the early part of June organizes what is called the Repair Fair. And it involves community development downstairs coming up with money to buy materials, and then the Home Builders Association supplies the free labor. And a lot of this stuff is for people to keep them in their homes a little bit longer, widening doorways, putting wheelchair ramps on, grab bars in the bathroom and such. And that's coming up, and they've got to organize this. And right now, they do not have a vehicle that fits the 501(c) in order to qualify for what would have been Mr. Benninga's thing. And in the interest of making sure that program stays on track, that is why I'm trying to do, you know, why I've talked to some of you and why I'm trying to move this thing ahead tonight.
Well, and if there needs to be any adjustments, we could possibly do that. And we've deferred it several times, I think, in pursuit of trying to nail down the right formula. But we can certainly work together and see if we couldn't do any more clarification on that. I do think some point down the road it would be good to look at an entire comprehensive waiver of fees in terms of policies and making some broader decisions about. But I think even statute doesn't allow you to charge some of those, you know, in terms of other government agencies to begin with, is my recollection of the SDCLs. However, for tonight, it would just be on this issue, and really wouldn't be changing it all that much from what you've done in the past, either adding 3 organizations for homelessness or changing the name, and then overall exempting platting fees or filing fees or inspection fees for those organizations that are named in the ordinance now.
Councilor Stivers?
Yes, I guess I'm wondering, Bob, what's wrong with passing my amendment? How would that affect the home builders tonight?
Well, I guess you know, the criteria that we've used, it wouldn't affect the Home Builders Association. One of your things, the county homeless thing, like Deborah said, may be exempt by state statute anyway. The other 2 that I looked at, St. Francis House and the Union Gospel Mission, obviously St. Francis House has moved ahead with their project. They paid the fees. The Union Gospel Mission has the foundation down there. When they get money for it, someday they're going to do that. And what I would like to do is look at the financing mechanism and find out if there is indeed free labor with it, or maybe we will decide to put that on later on. I just think that those things are kind of judgment calls that we as a council should make later on, instead of just giving them carte blanche access to you know, reduce fees or no fees.
I guess my response is that I think what we want to do with this amendment is to send a message that we're concerned about homeless people. And this is what the St. Francis House, Union Gospel Mission's involved with, the county permanent supportive housing. I mean, I think that's a very good message for us to send. But at the same time, of course, we're not going to be, hurting the Home Builders Association and what they want to do either.
Well, that could be. I just think that obviously when it come time to funding the county thing for the homeless, we had quite a bit of variance of opinions on that down here. And, if we're going to be doing something, perhaps we should be consistent instead of just trying to get rid of regulation in a backhand manner.
Councilor Knudsen?
I would just like to say again, I kind of apologize for really bringing this all up at the first time because I feel like probably the system was working probably fine, and I recall clearly that I'm the one who wondered if it was too limited and if we should open it up more. And yet in my mind, I might have mentioned all nonprofits, but I never ever really meant that we should get exempt all nonprofits in this business. But I really actually prefer staying. And I've thought about this lots and talked to quite a few people about it. I really prefer to stay with the spirit of the original legislation, which was, again, to keep people, affordable housing, keep people in their homes more easily. And so I'm very supportive of the efforts you have put forth on this, Councilor Litz. And again, it goes without saying that I'm very, very interested and concerned about the homeless in our community. But I think we kind of open up a can of worms if we start adding other wonderful nonprofits to this list, too. Like when I looked at this, one of these proposals, I thought, well, okay, Union Gospel Mission's in here. How come Salvation Army's not in here? And where do we go? Where do we go with this? Again, I feel like we're kind of starting to go backwards again. But again, I'm the one who kind of caused all this controversy.
Councilor Litz, so if I understand you right, your logic is basically these organizations that are under the original document are recurring events that, if not every year, recur often.
Yes.
And the other ones are more one-time proposals for like what the organizations that Councilor Staggers is proposing.
They would be spread out a lot more over the course of, however many years it takes them to get funding and help to put the projects together. And I think that the council at that time could certainly be approached about it. And I'm certain if there was justification at the time and looking at, their funding mechanisms and what's happening, I can't see this council turning somebody down that's in need.
Gail, is it possible that, between now and tonight that we could see if there is a mechanism in the charter or in the ordinance already that allows us to waive fees like this on an individual basis? Sure. Because I think that would be a large part to the end of this solution here. So, Councilor Staggers.
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering here, we already do exempt individual organizations from fees.
Yeah, and I think the question is where do you draw the line, because we have a lot of 501c3s and a lot of nonprofits in our
That's the reason, of course, why I limit it to those few organizations there that deal specifically with the homeless. It's pretty narrow.
Any other comments? Anything else for Deborah?
Yes, I do. Moving on with that one, and again, I know there's discussion here, but I just want to make sure that everybody is sort of on the same page. Yes, there is a waiver of fees. There is, and the council, of course, has a discretion and determination as policymakers as to whom you're going to waive and whom you're not going to waive. So I leave those discussions to you. Just want to make sure that as we head toward that 7 o'clock meeting that we're kind of at least on the same page and are prepared for those policy discussions. And then the last one is there is the Vehicle for Hire ordinance. As you know, the Vehicles for Hire ordinance had several votes, and it failed. All of those failed. And so there'll be, I think Councilmember Anderson has talked about, and perhaps Councilmember Knudsen, doing a motion to reconsider. You have that provision in our city ordinances, which states that a motion may be reconsidered at any time during the meeting of the city council or at the next regular council or the next regular meeting. A motion for reconsideration being once made and decided in the negative shall not be renewed. So you have one opportunity to bring back the Vehicles for Hire. Of course, you could always reintroduce it, but just so you know, you have one opportunity to bring back that motion for a reconsideration of the ordinance itself. And then finally, a motion for reconsideration can only be made by a member who voted on the prevailing side. That would be the side who voted no. which Councilmember Anderson is a part of that. We have put it under new business. It doesn't have to be there, but at the end of your agenda, that's where we have placed all that information for you. And again, this would only be a motion to reconsider the ordinance. You would not be voting on the ordinance tonight. It would simply be the motion to reconsider. Walking in an ordinance is a different set of rules, and that's not what we're doing tonight. It would simply, again, be that motion to reconsider the ordinance to set a date of hearing for April 12th. And then that's the night you would actually vote on the ordinance itself. Any questions on that part?
Councilor Knudsen?
Yes, I'm very supportive of reconsidering that issue, and Councilor Anderson and I have visited about that issue. But just a question is, or maybe a friendly reminder to my friend at the end of the table here, is that because Councilor Anderson and I voted differently on that issue, I mean, I assume that I cannot second that motion?
You can.
Or is it?
Any member can second
second it?
a motion to
Okay.
reconsider, but the one making the motion must be on the prevailing side,
All
and that's
right.
under Robert's rules. That provision actually isn't an ordinance, but it's under Robert's rules. So, yeah, anybody can second it, but you need to be a prevailing side to second.
Thank you for that clarification.
you
I
bet.
just wanted to make sure it was okay.
And I've spoken with most of the council on this. Basically, reconsidering this is bringing back the same rates that we were looking at the last meeting, but also at this time including the CPI that Councilman Costello had brought up, and also a way to administer that CPI. In conversations that I had after that meeting, I found that the school district has a contract with Yellow Cab, or the taxi cab company, and they do use the CPI to determine their rates also. So I had our staff investigate that, and that's what we'll be bringing forward tonight.
Okay, and then if I could just continuing off of Councilmember Anderson Jr.'s comments, on your monitors and for those who are watching, you can see the proposed changes. The city attorney's office drafted Section 2, and then we made some changes to that at the request of council. But you can see that the first, Section 1, would be to raise those caps, simply to raise the caps to a different level. You can see the new numbers added there. They're the underscored. The rates that are currently in law now are the ones that would be are crossed out. And then Section 2 would be the annual review of those rates with that CPI. So if you will, starting on January of 2011, the maximum rates as set forth in Section 1 of this section shall be increased or decreased annually over the fares from the previous year in accordance with the Consumer Price Index percentage for transportation services as set forth by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. The annually adjusted rates should be available at the planning department and the city clerk's office. So we'll fix the extra on that. But that has been discussed with Deborah Gaikowski. She thinks she's favorable to that. I believe that is, for the most part, with the council, from the discussions that we've had, that is favorable to all of you. If it is not, could you speak to me after the meeting, and we can move forward with this.
Councilor Knudsen?
Just a couple of questions, and I'd shared some of these thoughts, I think, in emails to some of you, is that regarding where the new information is posted, I mean, I'm fine if we post it here, and if we post it over at the planning department, that's just harmless to me. But it seems that it's more important to me that we post it where people who are using the services will find it, which I do not think is here or the planning department. So is it just assumed that we would, like every other ordinance, every other fee that is set, I mean, is it just assumed that this would be on the city's website? And then, more importantly to me, in the vehicles, I would think that it would be required in the vehicles that are in the wheelchair express business? Or is that just so obvious that I'm missing something?
If I may, I believe this is only the cap. The rates are posted in the vehicles in a different section of law. This would be, in fact, well, I'm not going to, yeah, that would be a different, I mean, this is only the cap. It doesn't require that all of the taxi, or all the stretcher companies, or Wheelchair Express and all of those have to use that maximum cap. So they may or may not adjust their rates at that CPI index every year, but they do have to post their rates. The planning department will post that online. It wouldn't really go under the transit area, so they were working through that when I spoke with Deborah, but they fully intend to put that available and online. But again, this is only the cap. It wouldn't be the actual rates being charged by the company. that would be up to their discretion.
Okay, so, again, and not, just a little confusion on my part. So, you're saying in the actual vehicles that are transporting these people that are confined to wheelchairs, that the new rate would be posted?
Yes.
But why would we not want the cap to be posted too? What am I missing on that?
Well, I guess you could. In the last sentence in Section 1, it says, "A schedule of these transport rates shall be posted at all times in the wheelchair or stretcher transport." I am not the person who administers this ordinance. It would be Deborah Gaikowski in the planning department. But I do believe they're posted their rates. They're required to. If you want to post the caps in addition to their rates, I guess I would defer to Deborah Gaikowski's comments on that, and she will be available on the night we view that. I can certainly speak to her about that and see and she's the one who kind of administers this project. It is not I. So I don't think there'd be an objection to that. It's just might be confusing to have two rates, though, in the cab at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Deborah? Guess not. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Mayor Munson. Is there anybody from the mayor's office to speak today? Seeing none. Audit committee. Rich, did you have anything you wanted to talk about regarding the audit committee? We'll have a report from you next week, I see on the agenda. Okay. Fiscal committee, we are planning on a fiscal meeting immediately following this update on the digital imaging update. So stay tuned for that, and please join us if you'd like. Land use committee.
No reports.
Public service committee.
For the first time, we don't have anything on our agenda, so we won't have a meeting next week.
City council open discussion. I'll go from order that the hands went up. Councilor Litz.
I defer to my colleague.
Okay, very gracious. Councilor
Oh, thank you.
Phoenix.
I've already talked too much today, so that was nice of him. Just a few odds and ends is one, again, regarding the Whittier neighborhood cleanup. This is the 4th year for that, and that event will take place on Saturday, April 24th. Again, it's the same time as last year, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., and I know that you all know about this up here, but I'm just sharing it for the listening public and the candidates out there and the audience that might want to help, again, with this event. But again, I know that the Whittier neighborhood folks are, again, they got this down to a science pretty much after doing this several years in a row, but I know they are still looking for trucks and trailers to help that day, and I know they're looking for us to help them, and then the volunteers will eat after the cleanup at the banquet again, like they have in other previous years. So that's just one advertisement. And then, I'm always promoting the Old Courthouse Museum, and the newest exhibit is, it's going to be really fun. It's about hot air balloons, and the opening reception is Thursday, April 15th from 5 to 7 p.m., and of course, everyone is welcome to that. And again, that exhibit is going to focus on the history of the hot air balloon business, and again, that the modern hot air balloon system was invented right here in Sioux Falls, as you probably realize, in 1960. But during this, at this exhibit, we will learn everything from the hot air balloon's smoky origins in France in the late 1700s to its reinvention into a modern aircraft. And then just my last comment here is I just wanted to thank. I was just thinking of the results of the recent survey regarding the city council and its approval rating of about 56%, 800 voters, residents surveyed. And I would just like to thank all of you as I'm ending my term on city council in a few weeks here, to just say thank you for your public service. I'm very proud to have worked with all of you, and I am very proud of that result by the public, a vote by the public in us, and I would just like to encourage citizens to continue to contact us by, or contact city councilors when we're, whoever is up here after us. But, I really do know from personal experience that you're all really hardworking people. And today, as I was running out the door, I took a phone call from someone about a towing police issue, and I just thought, I don't think the average person has a clue, nor can they, how much time we spend at this job, and I'm really very proud of our efforts. But I really do want the public to continue to contact us when they have concerns. I mean, don't be frustrated with anything in the city. Call us, email us. I mean, we're always on the computer. We're always answering our phones. And so if you have concerns, let us know about it, and we'll do everything we can to help you out.
Councilor Litz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that too, Dee. I agree with your sentiments exactly. There's two issues here that I wanted to bring up. And number one, it was referred to the alarm ordinance, and I know the Argus leader has given some generous time as to that. The pages and stuff. And to be honest with you, I have not had an opportunity to read that yet, and Chief made a compelling case for it down here the other day. But I just heard Vernon say that the Public Services Committee has nothing to do. And in the spirit of that, I just think that I would, I also had 3 calls on this thing, people talking about, the alarm ordinance. And in the interest of giving the public more input on it and also educating ourselves on it and looking at this rather lengthy thing, I would like to know if there's any other interest in us moving this to Public Services Committee.
Yeah, Bob, I totally agree with you. At the last council meeting, that's what I suggested, but at that time, the decision was not made to. But I totally agree with you and support you in that.
Thank you.
Councilor Knutson?
Well, and I'm with whatever the majority wants to do on that, but I actually am not terribly interested in referring it to a committee, even though I serve on the Public Services Committee. But I know I was not here last week for the presentation, but I watched the entire presentation through Granicus. In fact, I watched part of the presentation on the alarm bit twice, and I actually support the fine aspect, but I actually am not in support of the other half, and I have contacted the chief of police and shared those concerns because I don't like to ever catch anyone off guard with my thoughts or comments or votes. And I just actually have no interest in setting up a third-party administrator and registering all the alarm companies in the burglar alarm business. And so I mean, so I'm just saying, I'm wondering. I mean, I don't care if we take it to a committee, but to me, from a practical standpoint, there are probably more people in the public that hear us, up here than they do at a committee meeting when most people are working for a living, and those meetings are not televised or recorded, and I kind of like to have just okay, enough.
Councilor Anderson?
Well, I guess I agree with Councilman Staggers and Litz that we need to take a look at this. I've gotten some replies from the public also, and as Councilwoman Knutson said, there's parts of it that I think that we do need to take a look at. One thing I do disagree with, though, is that our last couple of Public Services Committee meetings has filled the room. So there has been interest in the items that we've been looking at, and I think it's a good idea to give the public a little more chance to input on this.
Well, Councilor Brown, I think you learned a lesson there.
We'll gladly take it. Lift the heavy load for you all again.
Thank you.
In fact, we're just excited to have it, actually.
Mr. Chair, I did have 2 parts.
Okay, what's the other half?
To continue unless there's, well, I guess the fill in the house at the Public Services Committee just confirms Dee's statement that the council's real popular at this time. The other thing that I wanted to bring up here, and it's going to be, I think it's been on all of our radars down here, and there's 4 people sitting out there that are running for the city council, and as they come forward, obviously, we're going to have a big change down here. There's going to be 4 people that are going to be leaving the picture regardless, and then there may be one more, that would require an appointment by the council. Normally, in this process, we have been in, I think in June or July is when we pick our chair and co-chair. And the question that I want to pose to this body here tonight is, obviously we've got an outgoing council and we've got an incoming council, and we're going to pick a new chair and a vice chair. And the question that I'm wondering is do we want to do this, or when do we want to do this? Does this council have an interest in setting the tone for the folks that are sitting out there?
We actually discussed this last week.
In my absence, of course.
Yeah, right.
Okay, apologize for that.
I think while there was, because the idea that I presented was on the last meeting of this council that we would elect a new chair and vice chair. So in essence, this council would elect the new chair and vice chair. and then upon the new council being seated, that chair and vice chair would make the selections, to all the various committees. Hopefully everybody knew that they had to sign up for committees. Now, some on the council, I think, were saying just let the new council elect their own chair and vice chair as well, too. So that's where we left it. We really didn't have any further discussion there. I think it makes sense, and I think there was general agreement that the chair and vice chair should be coordinated with the actual terms. So moving it up from July, I think, was generally agreed that would be a good idea. Who would make the election? That, I guess we never came to a resolution on that. So, Councilor Knudsen?
Yeah, Councilor, thank you for bringing up that topic, because Councilor Costello, that was very good of you last week, I think, to, from an organizational standpoint, to just bring up that topic, and I meant to comment on that earlier in my open discussion comments, is my personal preference, just my vote on this, and I know it's not a vote, just a preference, would be that, again, continuity is good and all that kind of thing, but I think actually that we are, after the swearing in of the new city councilors and so forth on May 17th, I still feel like that we would be in just excellent shape to allow the vice chair, to just step in and be the chair, and it's what I'm trying to say in just the kindest way I can say it, is I much prefer that the new council choose its own chair and vice chair. I know the intentions are just extremely honorable, but I think it's presumptuous of me to think that I should, that the next chair and vice chair needs to come out of the ones who are left here, and there are just so many very capable candidates running for city council that I have no doubts that any one of them could step in and be chair or vice chair just like that, because so many of them have been following us for so many months that some days I think they know more than I do, and so that's my personal thought.
Deborah, did you have a comment?
Yes, thank you, Deborah Owen. I was going to comment that whatever you do, if you would like to change that date, so maybe that night of when the council is sworn in, maybe at the 7 o'clock meeting they want to elect their chair and vice chair, or however you want to come to your conclusions to handle this, you already have policies, if you will, out there now that state when you're going to do it. So maybe we should talk about changing those to either update them to coincide with the election cycle, which would then maybe have the council either. This is a policy discussion for you, but we need to change those to change the date of when you elect your chair and vice chair. But on that same note, you don't have a policy that says, even some clarification maybe down the road, that if the council chair can no longer perform the duties, the vice chair would take the role, then maybe the council would elect the next vice chair. We probably should bring that clarification to that policy as well, because we don't even have that part in there.
Councilor Litz?
I think I agree with Deborah, but maybe moving the date up, but leaving the other part open for the individual councils at the time may be, the best way to do it. I would just say this, that I recall when I came onto the council that it was Bob Jamieson was the chair, and I can't remember who was the vice chair. It was a D? Yeah, okay, that's right. And but I was very comfortable having somebody who had been on the council for a while assuming that role, and I agree with Dee. There's something to be said for the continuity, because we're going to have some big changes down here, and maybe just having that continuity from the old to the new would be good. Or I'm sure we would survive even if the new council decided to put all new people in there as well. We could go either way on this. The representative form of government for me says let the old one do it, and the new, easier form of government says let's let the new one do it. There's arguments to be made both ways.
Well, why don't we move forward on the fact that we'll make the change so that we're going to get this tied to the terms, and individually you guys can send, and Deborah can start doing some research and drafting that policy, those changes to the policy, and then over the course of the next week or so, we can kind of just weigh in on where we think we're at with that decision. I don't know that I have a strong feeling either way, other than I think that we should move it up from July to that May timeframe. So,
Mr. Chair, then do we pretty much have an agreement with the council people present that maybe moving the time frame up is the thing to do, and we want Deborah to move ahead with that?
Yeah, is there anybody that's opposed to that or doesn't think that that's a good idea?
What are we actually proposing to move it up to? I
Well,
guess would it
we
be after the election, or?
That's a little bit in limbo, but just moving it up away from July anyways, moving it closer to that swearing-in time. And I don't.
The question was,
yeah.
why was it July? And I don't know. That preceded my time with the council. I can say I've kind of looked at some other cities and how they're doing this, if you will, because your staff is the one who prepares for the swearing-in ceremony. In the city of Omaha, who is the same form of government, they actually elect their chair and vice chair after they're sworn in. I wondered if it would be more fitting at the 7 o'clock meeting that night with everybody new and seated to have it then. And then change that. So that would be one of the things that you would take action on, or the new council would take action on May 17th. May 17th is the day when all the elected officials are sworn into office for their next 4-year term.
Let's go with that, drafting it under that scenario, so that I don't think we want to name the 17th, because it's not always going to be the 17th every time, but, the first meeting after being elected, that they would be sworn in. And it, just for those that are in the audience and listening, wondering why it matters, because we have a number of committees that we all sit on, and when 4 counselors leave, suddenly there's a hole in CCOG and UDC and all over the Metro Communications, whatever. And so this will just make for a smoother transition, because otherwise there's this 1.5 to 2-month gap, and you never know if we're covering our meetings like we should. So that's why the change is necessary. Councilor Knudsen?
Councilor Costello, again, not trying to make this into a bigger deal than it is. I think it is important that we, follow the policy that we have, and or whatever policy we have on any issue. I think that it should be followed. But just to play the other side of that for a second, is that I was thinking too, as I thought more about this last week as I watched the meeting via Granicus, is that another thought is. If we decide that we want to just leave the policy as it is, the truth of the matter is, it just seems to me that it's quite logical that a vice chair, whether it doesn't say that in the ordinance, in our policy per se, but to me, just kind of common sense kind of makes me think that the vice chair, then, if the chair's not there, that the vice chair could fill in. If we want to clarify that in our policy, that's fine. But the reason I think there's some advantages also to having the current vice chair step up and fill as the chair for at least 6 weeks, if not longer, is because that very first night, those new city councilors, they're getting to know each other. Those candidates out there, and then eventually some of them will be councilors. They're getting to know each other a little bit and so forth. But, I'm not speaking for them. I'm not trying to speak for them, but I would think that it might be kind of helpful for them to have about 6 weeks to see kind of how each other is performing, how confident they are, who has more leadership skills than others, and then, again, closer to July 1st, elect the chair and vice chair, after they've kind of gotten to know each other a little bit. So that's another thought.
Yeah, and I couldn't disagree with you more as regarding it's not so much about the vice chair and the chair, it's just about filling all these different committee meetings and making sure we've got quorums and the necessary bodies in those positions. So, Councilor Litz?
Truth is I agree with Dee's logic there, but the real truth is we're all not that important up here, and actually the committee chairs and all that stuff, we're going to fall into place on that, and everybody's going to figure it out anyway. So,
well, let's see what the new policy or what a revised policy would look like when Deborah has a chance to put it on paper, and we'll evaluate it at that time. Any other City Council open discussion? Okay, and we have no presentations, so if there's nothing else, we will adjourn. We're adjourned. Fiscal meeting to follow, so if you want to stick around for that.